Morning, everybody. Hopefully everybody can hear me. This is Sue Lan Lee. I'm from Better Hearing Center. Welcome. I hope you all had a nice holiday season. And thank you for taking your time out this wet Monday morning to join us. I think this is the best place for you all to be, indoor, and watching an exciting presentation. For those of you who have just, we're going to wait a few more minutes for other, it might be a good time for you to grab a piece of pen or paper so you can write down some questions that you may have or comments, and we will be going over the questions that you all have at the end of the presentation. During this presentation at any time, section that will pop up on your screen, you may also put down and jot down your questions and put them out there on the screen if you like, and then we will go over it again at the end of the presentation. So we'll wait a few more minutes for others to join us. We'll get started. Okay, so let's go and start right now. So for those of you who are not familiar with the screen, where it's circled in the red, that is the question down and present your questions to us, and even comments. If you have comments and you want to write it down so that we can see what you have questions or concerns about. And those of you who want to follow along using closed caption, that will be made available to you through this little blue dot here, that circle red on your screen. That will activate closed captioning so that you can follow along perhaps easier if you choose to, like on top TV. Okay, so do whatever you feel comfortable. But again, we're going to get started now. And this is our first webinar for 2023 from Better Hearing Center. So those of you who are attending, most of you know our practice and are familiar with our practice. Joining me later will be Elizabeth Eden from Earlens, who is sponsoring this webinar. Let me just give you a little bit of background regarding our office. This office is 1400 Franklin, 1992. It started previously and we were known as Golden Gate Hearing Services back then. It was under a different owner, Larry Ng, who moved to Maui in 2011. And at that time, this practice was taken over by a different audiologist, Mark Sanford. So then we became part of his Better Hearing Center group practice, because Mark Sanford also owns other practices in the Bay Area. He's notably in Walnut Creek, he's in Menlo Park, Monterey, and recently he acquired other offices, I think, in Manteca and Stockton. Okay, so now we're part of that group practice. So when you Google us, Better Hearing Center, we're located in different areas of the Bay Area. For those of you who don't know me, I may look familiar to most of you, but those of you who don't know me, let me just remind you who I am. My name is Sue Lan Lee. I'm the audiologist here. I've been here actually since this practice opened in 1992. But prior to that, I started fitting hearing aids back when there was an Emporium on Market Street, which is now the San Francisco Center. So it was a hearing aid dispenser back in the 80s. So I'm the old lady around here. Fast forward is 2023, and obviously I've seen a lot of changes in the hearing aid industry, and I've worked with a lot of people and providing hearing health care to many of you out there. And I'm working with actually some of patients' children's now, the second generation. So it's been quite an honor to service those of you in our community. Now, you may or may not know, statistically, there are over 44 million people in the United States alone that suffer from hearing loss. There's often one of the problem that is prevalent but often overlooked. And this has been a passion of ours to service the community with those of you with hearing loss, and also for those of you who are interested in preventing hearing loss, and family and friends who have to deal with people with hearing loss, and how we can help, because those of us who have better hearing, we can be part of their solution or part of their problem. But I think today here we are here to talk about something new that we are offering to the hearing impaired population. So I think all of you are here and interested in learning about something new and how we can address hearing loss. All of us have been in situations where we all wish we can hear better. Who doesn't want to go out and take a walk in nature and hear the birds, or take a walk in the ocean and hear the waves? Who doesn't like to enjoy music? And when we listen to music, we like to be able to enjoy it and hear a fuller sound, a richer sound. Who doesn't engage socially, individually with people and have problems? So these are all experiences that we all have one upon a time enjoyed when we have better hearing, but over time with hearing loss, we can't enjoy these moments as much as we have. So hearing loss does impact our quality of life. I would all like for you to take a moment and think of, obviously most of you have hearing loss, and that's why you are here, but take a moment, even if you think and those of you who are wearing your hearing aids, I hope, I'd like for you to take a moment and think back and say, even though if your hearing aids are working well or not working well, what is a moment where you feel that you would like to hear better? There's always that moment where you say, gosh, I wish I heard that person better. Or I went to an event and you felt that you didn't get anything out of it, and all came down to because you didn't have a good listening experience. So we're all here to hopefully help change that. And with that said, I'm going to pass the camera over to Elizabeth. She's from Earlens, and I'll let her introduce herself. Okay.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Eden, and I'm with Earlens, and I am honored to be here with Better Hearing Center, and especially with Dr. Sue-Ann Lee. As you all know, those of you who have worked with her before, she is an exceptional audiologist. She follows the best practices and really cares about her patients. So you are so fortunate to work with her, and I'm excited for us to have our little time here today where we can share a little bit more about this new hearing solution with you. I have actually been in the hearing industry for 16 years now in New York City and in the Pacific Northwest, as well as in the San Francisco Bay Area now. And I am able to work with clinics and patients on the whole West Coast, and it's been a really exciting time. So part of what's been really exciting is there have been substantial advances in hearing technology over the last 50 plus years. As you can see here on this slide, there have been quite a few new things that have been offered to make patients' lives better. And both Dr. Lee and I are very proud to have been a part of it. And if you look here, you can see 2013, I wish that they shared a little bit about Earlens. And when we came to fruition, we actually, our founder, Dr. Perkins, who was the founder of one of the major hearing aid companies, Resound, he started work with us in 1999. And in 2017, we released the first generation. 2019, the second generation. So some of you might have heard of us or even worn us in the past, worn Earlens and worked with Earlens in the past. And then our third generation was released in June of 2020. And I have a unique vantage point as my husband has worn Earlens for 4 years. And he's had some wonderful outcomes. And he was particularly interested in Earlens. He's an engineer because despite the advances in hearing aid technology over the last 50 years, one thing that hasn't changed is the mechanism of action. And so Earlens is the first contact hearing solution, which is very exciting. And that's really one of the biggest distinctions, which we'll get through in a few minutes and we'll spend more time on. So some patients are absolutely delighted with their hearing aids, and that's something that makes us all so very happy. However, there are some patients that are seeking better performance. And maybe some of the comments in these little word bubbles here are familiar to you. Maybe you feel like you still don't do well hearing in restaurants, which was my husband. And much of his work is done meeting with different people in restaurants, and that was a challenge for him. Some prefer better sound quality in which their hearing aids maybe sounded less tinny. Some miss how music used to sound. And others will say, I'm still struggling when there's background noise. And so really, Earlens was designed initially specifically to address sound quality. That was something Dr. Perkins, when he started working on this product in 1991, wanted to address. And we'll go a little bit more into the mechanism of action later, but one thing to note up front is Earlens uses a tiny lens placed in the ear to directly vibrate the eardrum. And you can see a picture of the lens here in someone's hand on the left. And so the benefit of this approach is that it amplifies sound across the broadest bandwidth available. So actually 2.5 times more than most hearing aids. And as one of the biggest benefits is it provides better speech understanding. And according to the studies that we've done, it provides 32% better speech understanding in noise as compared to hearing aids, which is something we're very proud of. It really reduces the feedback and whistling from the product. And we work with Apple Bluetooth devices. So it's made for iPhone, meaning you can have the product, you can have your phone calls or podcasts or videos, music streamed directly into your hearing aids and kind of use that as if it were an AirPod. And you might already have that with some of your other products as well. So you might be thinking, well, I've heard other manufacturers talk about how their product has better sound quality or better speech understanding. How is Earlens different? So let's watch this video that explains how Earlens works. All right, excellent. So you might be wondering, so now that you understand how Earlens works, let's talk about what a lens actually does for your hearing, and we will have Dr. Sue-Lan Lee start the conversation with you.
Okay, so this is an audiogram. This is a typical chart and a graph where we record your responses during a hearing test. I think this chart is fairly familiar with most of you. If it isn't, let me remind you how to interpret this chart. So there's symbols that you see here across this chart. The X marks represent responses, recorded responses from the left ear. The O marks represents responses from the right ear. So during a hearing test, we give you different sounds and different tones or different pitches to listen for. And what we're trying to do and we ask of you is to respond when you hear them, even if they're very soft. So down here on this scale, we're talking about levels of volume or intensity. Across here, we're talking about pitch. So you see a zero line here. The zero line is a baseline that represents normal or average hearing. It doesn't mean there's no sound. That's 20/20 hearing. So we're comparing your hearing, your responses with somebody with normal hearing. So the further down these symbols are from that zero baseline, we say you have more hearing loss. Okay? There are people who hear better than average, but we're interested in your hearing and comparing with someone normal or average hearing. And we'll talk about a little bit later why it's important, why we test within this area, and why these sounds are important to interpretation. 0 to 25, this area here, we say if any of these symbols fall within the area, we say you have hearing within normal limits. Typically around 50 to 55, that's what we call normal conversational level. At this point, speech should be loud enough so that you can hear us comfortably. If these symbols fall close to the 50 line, that means you're barely hearing the sound, where we find, those of us with normal hearing, where we already find it to be comfortably loud. So our range of hearing, so we start detecting sound at this level, and generally by 70 dB, that's already adequately loud. So in everyday life, we do hear sound at different levels across different pitches. So hopefully your hearing will fall within this area. If during a test your hearing does not fall within this area, definitely you're going to have trouble hearing parts of speech, because speech falls within this area that we are trying to measure during a hearing test. So if, for example, this person, this is the result from this individual, so the dark blue area are the sounds that he can't hear if they were presented at those levels. So if I was to speak to somebody in a whisper, which is measure somewhere here, that person would not hear that whisper. This person isn't even hearing sound until it reaches these levels. And then once they're loud enough in this light blue area, this is when the person starts hearing these sounds. So how does that impact our ability to understand speech? Let me go back a little bit more. So these sounds, low pitch, medium pitch, high pitch, is often, why is it important to hear high-pitched sounds? When I talk about high-pitched sounds, I'm not talking about just birds chirping or whistling of a kettle when it's, I'm talking about in terms of speech understanding. There are high-frequency sounds, which are some of the consonant sounds. So if you look at this chart here, this separates where speech is measured. Regardless if you're a man, woman, or child, if you produce these sounds in language, they are measured in these areas here. So in speech, there's no such thing as a pure tone in speech. Speech is a mixture of these sounds. So vowel sounds, for example, ah, e, oo, they're formed in the back of the throat. So these are the deeper sounds. Higher pitched sounds, they're formed in other parts of the mouth with air blown through our tongues, our lips, our teeth, and they're measured out here. So when we say a word like cat or fish, it's a mixture of sounds, correct? So if you have a hearing loss like this, you may hear the eh, but you may not hear the f and sh that is formed because your hearing loss fell below this area where the sound is being made. And so speech is a mixture of sounds, so that's why it's important for all of you to hear sounds, not in just this area, but all across this area here. So when you're only hearing parts of speech, which many of you do without your hearing aid, you'll say, gee, the very common comment that we hear is, I hear, but I can't understand. So when you wear hearing aids, the hearing aid is attempting to amplify areas of speech where you do have difficulties. But is your hearing aid actually doing that? Can it do that? So how much we can provide you with amplification is really, to this day and age, is based on the limitations of the amplifier, the microphone, the processor of the hearing aid that you're wearing. So for example, when like you see something, but if you're only seeing parts of speech, your brain is going to have a harder time interpreting what you do hear. So for example, if you look at this, is this person saying 63 and sunny, or is this person saying 53 and funny? So this is how our brain works. If our brain is only hearing parts of speech, then it has to work harder to fill in those blanks. So it's not that our brain is incapable of hearing more sounds.
It may be a new concept to you that different speech sounds have different frequencies, which make some sounds harder to hear than others. But you can actually use a tool called a spectrogram to show how different sounds occur at different frequencies. First, let's look at words that contain more low frequencies and may be easier to hear. Words with lots of vowels like bunny, now, and dollar. Now let's look at some words with high frequency sounds that people with hearing impairment may struggle to understand. Words like cat and cap, first and thirst, or wisp and wish.
Okay, so you saw that spectrum was actually measuring speech, and as you see that how the voice's intensity, pitch fluctuates, and this is why it's important for you to be able to have the ability to hear across that spectrum so that you can hear all the words clearly for speech understanding. Okay, so Elizabeth, why don't you talk a little bit more about how we understand how the brain works?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, as Dr. Lee just mentioned, if you can't hear all the sounds, it doesn't just impact your speech understanding, it also makes your brain have to work harder to understand what someone's saying. And many of you have probably heard Dr. Lee counsel on this and educate you on this over the years, but the area in your brain that has to work harder is the part that processes short-term memory. And so that's why, as you can see on this slide, some research has shown that straining this area of your brain from not hearing well can actually be linked to cognitive decline. And so having a hearing aid that gives full access to the full ranges of sounds is not just about improving your ability to hear people, but it also is about keeping your brain healthy. So that's another added benefit. And so let's discuss how Earlens gives you the fullest range of sounds available today. So if we look right here, we can see traditional hearing aids. Let's talk about how this works, right? And you all know from Dr. Lee educating you, you have incoming sound, either if you have something over your ear, it's picked up by the microphone there, or if you have something in your ear, it's picked up by the microphone there, and that's transmitted into a digital signal, and then that will create amplified sound through the air, so it'll push the amplified sound waves down the ear canal to move your eardrum. And so why is that? So why do we have this mechanism of action? Well, traditional hearing aids that rely on that little speaker, right? And so they can only amplify sounds, like we showed you previously, enough for you to hear them across a smaller range of frequencies. It's about the physics, and I have a really great paper analogy for you that Dr. Lee has heard for over a year now, to hear across a small range of frequencies. So wearing traditional hearing aids absolutely gives you improvement in your hearing, but it's a little bit narrower amount of improvement. We'll go through that in a little bit later. But you might be still missing, and depending on your hearing loss, you could hear maybe more of this or less of it. It all really depends on the amplification chosen and your hearing loss. But because of the limitation of the speaker technology, you won't be able to gain as much as you would need for a broader bandwidth of sound. So that's why some of the patients have some of the feedback we saw for the word bubbles, where some of them want a little bit more, and why Earlens was created. So in order to optimize that hearing and provide more, Earlens has that lens, and the lens is used to directly vibrate the eardrum. And so you can see on the graph, and we'll show you a little bit more about how we do it in a minute. And you can see if the green area is what the amplification is providing, right? We're providing significantly more. Right now we have everything that's, in the light blue the patient can hear, and everything in the green the patient can hear. So it allows you to hear the sounds that you were missing before. So it's a broader bandwidth. So how do we do this? So it starts the same, right? There's a microphone that picks up the sound right here, transmits it into a digital signal, and now the custom ear tip, instead of acting like a speaker, sending the sound waves or the air pressure down the ear canal, it sends high fidelity audio. So it sends high fidelity audio transmitted from the ear tip to the receive coil on the lens, and that gently vibrates the eardrum to activate the natural hearing process. And I love analogies, and so I think this piece of paper could provide a good analogy. So if this piece of paper was let me make sure I have it in here, was your eardrum, hearing aids then, if there would be like blowing on this piece of paper because it's air pressure, right? So if the goal of amplification is to move this piece of paper or your eardrum more, this would, and I'm not going to blow on paper in this day and age, but if you blow on it, you could see that I could make this piece of paper move, but I would have to apply a lot of air pressure to make it move significantly. And we showed that picture of the lens earlier. So with Earlens, we have something directly on the eardrum, kind of like a contact lens is directly on your eye. And it stays in place on your eardrum because it's made anatomically perfectly to stay there and stay in place. And also, you'll spritz some oil a few times a week to keep it in place, just like you would with contact lenses, use the drops to provide that surface tension. So with that lens in place, the way we're getting the eardrum to move in this instance is manually moving it. And you can even see from this paper analogy how it's much easier to move, it's less effort, it's more precise, and it's more efficient. And so that efficiency is what provides the broader bandwidth. If we compare conventional hearing aids with the narrower to Earlens with the broader bandwidth, that's why we're able to provide more, because of the efficiency and precision.
Yeah, I think what Elizabeth is trying to say, instead of like traditional hearing aids where we're using increasing and using amplified sound to attempt to move that physical mass, which is the eardrum, if we have something physically moving the eardrum, that displacement of energy is going to be much more efficient, and that's going to result in improved hearing because you're going to be able to pick up more sounds. Absolutely. From this system.
Absolutely. Much more efficient. We had a patient say the other day, you're cutting out the middleman, right? Instead of having to blow on it with the speaker, you're just directly moving it, which I thought was an astute observation.
So this is a silent hearing aid.
Yes.
This hearing aid does not make sound. So like traditional hearing aid, when we amplify sound, the more amplification there's also a challenge of containing all the amplified sound in the canal. And some of you may have experienced feedback as a result. So you will not experience that with this system because the earpiece, because it doesn't make sound, we don't even have to trap sound in the ear. The earpiece that is made with this device is open. So most of you will feel and can hear your voice much better. And we can utilize some of the natural hearing that you may have if you do have some good hearing in some areas on that chart.
Right. So one of the advantages with Earlens, you might be saying right now, okay, that all sounds great, right? The 32% better speech understanding and noise, but can you back it up? Well, there are two ways that we can prove this. And the first is every claim we make about the superiority and effectiveness of this product is based and backed by science. And so you can see here on this sheet, a peer-reviewed study conducted by the National Center for Audiology proved that, number one, Earlens allows you to better understand sentences in situations with louder background noise. And number two, you'll more accurately recognize consonant sounds that are critical for distinguishing words. So those are some of the biggest benefits, along with the sound quality, better music, and things of that nature. And that's really why Time Magazine named Earlens one of the best inventions of 2020, because it was such a differentiating solution in the marketplace. So in order to really hear the difference, let's listen to this comparison video showing how Earlens sounds versus traditional hearing aids.
Earlens uses revolutionary technology to directly vibrate the eardrum, giving you dramatically better hearing than traditional hearing aids. Just listen to these situations and hear the difference.
All right, excellent. Well, so we have several stories to share about people just like you who have hearing loss and are looking for a great solution. So let's start by watching a video about several Earlens patients. And the exciting thing is my colleagues and I had the opportunity to work with a few of them because Earlens asked us to recommend some patients who are really delighted that they could speak with. And so it's been really an honor to be part of this journey and have patients really experience the benefit. And then Dr. Lee can maybe share some anecdotes that she has. And she just shared one actually earlier with me this morning regarding patients and some of their outcomes. So let's watch this video now.
I started doing something that I found was very isolating, and that was to stop asking. I just tried to guess what someone was saying, and then you come up with those kind of answers that could answer anything, like, oh yeah, or you have no idea what they said.
Asking people to repeat things when you're looking right at them is pretty embarrassing. And it just got to the point where I knew I had to do something.
The day that I found out about Earlens, it just changed everything for me. It really was the answer that I was seeking.
It's a different system because you have these ear lenses in your ears. There's an actual device that is placed on your eardrum, and that device is I'll just call it a little motor, and it actually vibrates your eardrum.
Earlens is that technology improvement that I've been looking for.
After getting my brand new Earlens, and I immediately turned the radio on to my favorite music, and I just sat there, and tears, I mean literally tears just came down. I told many people, I said, I've got my hearing back.
I was walking from the kitchen through the living room, and I stopped because I heard an unusual noise. I couldn't figure out what it was. It was my feet compressing the carpet. This is something you can't express to someone.
When my grandkids were talking softly, and I said, now, why would you say that? And they all kind of went, well, Pops can hear now. It's a whole different world for me.
Now I know that when I walk into any situation, I'll be able to hear what's going on. And prior to Earlens, I could walk into any situation and wonder whether I was going to hear anything or not.
To have gone from obscurity and reclusion and isolation to hearing all these sounds again. I've described it to many people. On December 29th, I had my second birthday.
From the first moment I got him, I was hooked to Earlens. There was no way I was going to go try something else. This is the way to go. They're worth every penny.
I'm hearing things now that I haven't heard in 10 years. It's been fantastic.
I don't recommend things to people unless I really believe in it. And I don't think there's anything I've recommended more frequently than ear lenses to people that I know. There is no reason to postpone this decision, and there is no reason to not make the right choice, and the right choice is Earlens.
Excellent. Well, we do have a few patients, just to quickly, some slides with just some results. Sometimes patients will say, what's the difference with Earlens? And as Dr. Lee mentioned earlier, this would be without Earlens and this would be with, closer to normal. But we'll quickly go through these because I think it's more compelling to hear from Dr. Lee herself regarding some of the unique patient scenarios. But this is actually a friend of mine who works at Earlens, actually, and her father was fit and he was a veterinarian, and he would have had to have retired if it wasn't for Earlens. Just the difference in clarity. We have psychologists who, said we couldn't understand our patients otherwise. So, Dr. Lee, I'm sure you have some patients to reference as well.
Yeah, so at our practice here at Better Hearing Center, we started offering Earlens to our patients last year. So it's almost a year ago that we started this journey, and it's been quite exciting how we make a decision, company, what products to use. Is not just based on what manufacturers come and tell us. Every manufacturer will claim that their hearing aids is superior or better than other manufacturers, but what makes us believers are when I get patient feedback. And one of the first opportunities I've had was fitting this patients who have purchased hearing aids, I think, almost every 3 years, and he was never a patient of our office, however, and he lived just 2 blocks away. So he's in pursuit of better hearing, and during that time, his wife who's a patient actually of our practice, he would come in whenever he had a problem, so we knew he wore hearing aids, but we also knew his struggles, and his wife is always trying to get him to go down to the dining room with her, but he never enjoyed going out with dining at the senior center that he lived at 2 blocks away. And one of the things that she commented on, that when he does go down, she feels that she always has to sit there and care for him. So she doesn't get to enjoy dinner as much as she could, because she would have to sit and interpret for him. And he didn't enjoy going down with groups because he couldn't participate in the conversation. So he would often have dinner by himself in his room. So he was one of our first Earlens patients. Thereafter, oh my gosh, he was like a changed person. I didn't know that. But one of his neighbors came in, and who's a patient here, said to us one day, she came in and she popped her head in and said, "What did you do to him?" And I go, "Oh my gosh, what did I do to him? I thought he was in pain or something." And she said, "No, he's like a social butterfly now. I mean, his hearing improved so much that he goes down to the dining room himself. He's all smiles. He's much more engaged in social conversations now, where he would not go without his wife previously." So that's one experience. So the first batch of patients that we fitted this year has all been experienced hearing aid users. I'd like to share another case with you. I think it's pretty compelling. We had an attorney. He came back and said, and told us shared his personal experience. He said the first day he went home, he thought he left the faucet running. So he went into the bathroom and he went into the kitchen and he goes, "No, there's no water running. What am I hearing? Where's the water coming from?" He looked out his bedroom window and there was a water fountain outside in the yard that he said he's never heard before. And he didn't know where that water was coming from. And that was exciting to him, and it's exciting to us, because these are all positive experiences that our patients, our long-term hearing aid user patients, are experiencing. So it's not that they weren't happy with their hearing aids, and they were looking for something better. And so what I'm encouraging those of you who have technology, whether you're using them or you're not using them, even if you were happy with them, allow yourself the opportunity to come in and listen to Earlens and experience it. Different people obviously have different experiences because all our brains work differently. But I think going forward, our goal is to always improve your hearing even more as your auditory system gets more and more compromised through the natural aging process. So how do you, to those of you who like to move forward with Earlens, how may you do so? Let me tell you a little bit about the process in terms of how you can get started. This is what's involved, the consultation of, obviously, those of you who are interested, you may or may not be candidates. I encourage you to come in for us to even update and get an updated audio test on you to see if you fall within the fitting range of this instrument system. As with any product we fit here, you're a candidate only if you fall within the fitting range of that instrument. So we would do the consultation. We also have something here that's very unique, which we didn't have before, is there is a comparator here that is offered by Earlens. So you have an opportunity to listen to the Earlens system. We can simulate what you may potentially experience when you are fitted with your own system and compare it to what you're wearing right now. So you can, and if you have a spouse or a friend, a family member who you've always had difficulties hearing and understanding, it'd be great if you can bring them with you during an appointment so you can listen to their voice whom you are familiar with through your hearing aids and listen to their same voice through the comparator. If you decide to move forward, then we schedule an appointment with an ear, nose, and throat physician because we will be customizing the make of that lens that fits up to the level of the eardrum. So then that ear, nose, and throat doctor, who we made arrangements to come on Wednesday afternoons, he will meet you, he will examine your ear, and he will be the one to take that deep impression up. It takes roughly about 10 days to 2 weeks to make the lens. And if you're interested in proceeding, we will take the impression and we will fit you after the impressions are taken in a 2-week period. The ear doctor, again, that will place that customized lens up in your ear. So he will be the one to, so we will be assessing audiometrically if you're a candidate, but it's the ear doctor that will make that final decision. Anatomically, if your ear is healthy enough for that placement to take place, is it large enough where we have enough room to build that lens for you, and if we can get it into your ears. Not everybody who wants the system, unfortunately, can use this system. Once the placement is done by the ear, nose, and throat doctor, then I will be programming the processor for you, and we will calibrate to make sure that the lens is in place. And thereafter, we would expect, like we do with any new fittings, for you to come back in a few weeks for us to follow your progress and see how you're doing. We will run another calibration to make sure that the lens is still in place. So this is how we assess whether that lens is in a proper place, is by calibrating. And if once you're fitted, we would expect you to come back every quarterly. We recommend that. You don't have to, but that lens placement is very important for the success of this fitting, because if the lens is out of place, then that signal is not directed properly at the lens. You will not get the results that you are seeking. During this period, Earlens, the concierge team, may be reaching out to you to check and see how you're doing. If you can't reach us, they also have an 800 number that you can call and express your concerns, or if you have questions, they are also there to support you as well. They are one of our main manufacturers that are in California, and we're very fortunate to have that. They're in Redwood City, whereas most of our hearing aid manufacturers are back east. Okay, so how much does the Earlens system cost, and why is it $12,000? So the first $1,000 for those forward, and our candidate goes to the ear, nose, and throat doctor, and that's for him to examine your ear physically. He will also clean your ears. That fee also goes for that deep impression, and for the placement of the lens, it covers for any of his service up through your trial period of 60 days after your fitting. $8,000 for those of you who are binaural candidates who have hearing loss in both ears. And, so it's $8,000 for the devices, the custom lens, and the custom earpieces. There's also the $3,000 to cover for that 3-year warranty and for services up through that 3 years, up through that 3 year. And that not only includes our services here, but in the event that you need an ear doctor to take the lens out to clean it, if you need to take it out for medical reasons like an MRI, if the system gets displaced and needs to be removed and reinserted, that also covers the ear, nose, and those service fees. So $12,000 will take you through the whole year on 3 years. For our attendees today, Earlens has graciously offered $1,000 off for those of you who would like to try Earlens sign up to try Earlens within the next 4 weeks. Shortly after the webinar, Michelle Mitchell, our patient care coordinator, will be reaching out to you to see if you had any additional questions, or if you'd like to just come back and have a consultation at our office and just listen to the Earlens and experience what potentially you could be using in the near future. Okay, so if you like, just a reminder, our office is 415-931-8180. And when you do call, mention to Michelle that you were in attendance today, and she will prioritize your appointment. She would also be reaching out to those of you who attended the webinar and also ask if you have any additional questions or concerns. And for those of you who cannot make it in during those days for whatever reason, we're flexible. We can schedule it the soonest, earliest appointment time that you have available. And for those of you who are thinking, Earlens, not Earlens, you're not sure, come on in, and if you haven't been here for a while, you should still come back regularly for cleaning, for reevaluations to see how we can better reprogram your hearing aids for you so they work to the optimum level.
And they're sometimes set aside, right, January 11th?
Yes.
And then the next Wednesday, the 18th in the afternoon?
Yeah.
So if you are interested, some patients like us to prioritize them and reach out and have Michelle reach out to you first. So you could put your name and phone number in that private chat if you want Michelle to prioritize you, since it might take a little while.
And then following after this webinar, there will be a link sent to those of you who have signed up so that you can also review the presentation. But we do encourage you to call our office.
Excellent. Well, so some common questions, and we'll look and see if you know any questions that you have. Make sure to write those in the Q&A area that Dr. Lee showed you. But here are some of the top questions about your lens. Do you wanna...
Yeah. So one of the common questions is, what can I feel? Can I feel the lens when I'm wearing it? Generally, like any prosthetics, when you switch something out in your ear anatomically, you would feel it. Why wouldn't you? It's something new to your body, so it does take time for the body to get used to it. From my experience working with patients who have used Earlens, many of them will feel the lens being inserted, but thereafter they don't. It's very light. It's very light. They don't feel it, and usually that sensation of something against the earring goes away if they sit it out for about a month. But during that time, I will say that you will expect a little bit of a compromise of your natural hearing because there is in front of the eardrum. So when you do take the processor out, the device that goes behind your ear that has a microphone, and you do leave the lens in your ear at nighttime so that you do not remove the lens on a daily basis, it does block off a little bit of your natural hearing. The next question is, do I need to change batteries? No, the processor that goes behind the ear where the microphone sits, that you wear externally, that is a rechargeable instrument. So at nighttime when you take it off, you just stick it in the charger, and in the morning when you take it out of the charger and put it on, it automatically comes back on. Can I connect it to my phone or other devices? At this time, the system is only compatible with Apple products, iPads, and cell phones, not Androids. Can I get it wet? Like any hearing instrument that you wear externally, no, you cannot get the processor wet. That's the part that goes behind your ear. But you can keep the lens in your ear. You can shower with it like as you would normally. Those of you who enjoy swimming, we encourage you to get earplugs, because any sudden gush of water, change of pressure, may displace the lens. The lens is not surgically implanted. It's being held in place, as Elizabeth mentioned earlier, by a little drop of oil that you may be applying every other day. How often do I need to get the lens checked? We encourage you to come back quarterly after the trial period for us to visually inspect the lens. We will do run a test, a calibration, and that will tell us if everything is aligned. If the calibration is off and your processor is working well, then we will make arrangement for you to meet with the ear doctor to remove the lens and have it reinserted. Sometimes we detect wax in the ear, and after we remove the wax, then everything is back to normal. Or there are times when the wax gets down there on top of the lens or behind the lens, and at that point we will arrange again for the ear doctor to remove the lens, clean it, and reinsert it. And that's what the fees are, would also include. So you don't have to worry about paying anything additional during the next 3 years. All our services here in the office, as with your traditional hearing aid, there's no charges covered. You don't have to worry about paying extra for the ear doctor. And he has graciously offered to come to our office so that you don't have to go elsewhere to get that service.
Should we go through the questions, Dr. Lee? Okay.
Okay, so there are additional questions. The first one says, will there be a recording to watch later? I missed most of the meeting due to work, but I'd love to hear all about it. Yes, so those of you who have signed up for the webinar, as I said, there will be a link sent to you. And I heard that also this webinar, recording of it will be posted on our website.
And just so you know, the Earlens, the webinar recording will come within 24 hours, and it does come from Earlens. So just be aware of that. So then be aware of the next one. Okay, and then, oh, I'm having the same thing too. Here we are.
Okay, the next question, how is the lens inserted? Is it permanent? Is it surgical? No, it's not permanent. It's not surgically implanted. And this is the nice thing. It's not an invasive procedure like with other surgery. And it's from all our patients' experience, it's been a painless procedure.
They just lubricate your ear canal and your eardrum really well, and it slides right into place, which is nice.
Because it's a customized lens. Video was on full screen, then your speech didn't show companion. Oh shoot, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. I thought we were both on the screen. Your example of most people hearing loss shows a downward curve with loss of higher sounds. My hearing curve is upward, showing my loss is greater in the low frequency. Will Earlens help with that? Absolutely. If your hearing loss falls within the threshold of 70 to 75 and above, you are a candidate of this product. Kind of like bone conduction.
The hard thing is I don't know when they said that during the presentation.
Yeah, no, bone conduction, we're bypassing all the outer ear, which includes the eardrum. So no, we are heavily involving the eardrum in this process. So it's not like bone conduction. Let's see. Thumbnail shows what?
Oh, Sue-Ann, but not her companion. I must have been out of the picture. I'm sorry. Okay. All right.
My screen is displaying your charts and your faces are thumbnails, except a couple of times the rainbow frequency video and full screen. I'm sorry.
We'll have to look into that. Maybe the recording, when you receive it, will do a better job of sharing that. So this reminds me of a few things we didn't talk about. Was the financing as well as
Oh, yeah.
as well as the trial period, the refundable. It's just me. Whoever asked this question, we won't say your name. Thank you for asking that because it reminded us both.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we talked about, okay, so let's go backtrack. So Earlens does have financing that they offer at 0%. But the non-refundable fee is $1,000 that goes to the ear doctor. And part of that is for his service to come and examine your ear. And doctors, unfortunately, work for free. And that also involves him taking that deep impression, cleaning up the ear canal, all and up to the eardrum, and taking that deep precision ear impression that will be used to customize the lens, reduction of that lens and the earpiece that just to process. Unlike traditional hearing aids that you get, the trial period would be 60 days. It does take from the time of the impression up to about 2 weeks to make up the order, in which time you will come back and it will be the same ear doctor to insert the lens. And right after insertion, we will be doing testing to make sure that the lens is in the optimum place that it should be for you to get the results that you were looking for.
So a 60-day trial. All right, so I think we answered all the rest. Let's see, there was one more that came through. I haven't, there we go, there's another one.
Yes, you will need the question is, I haven't had a hearing test in decades. Well, I need to get an updated test before becoming eligible. Absolutely, we always encourage that. For us to better program the hearing aid, for us to make sure that you are in fact a candidate, we would want to do another hearing test and reevaluate your hearing before we even allow you to go forward. Yeah. So do you have anything to add?
We're excited to see what you think of this when Michelle reaches out to see if you have questions or see if you'd like to come in for those days that Dr. Lee has reserved. Thank you for taking the time.
Yes, we appreciate you taking the time.
And like Dr. Lee mentioned, it's a nice cozy day to sit inside and have a little warm coffee or beverage. And
yeah.
So thank you for taking
the time. And I hope some of you will take advantage of this offer and just even come and listen if you are curious to learn a little bit more about Earlens. And does it really sound better than what you're wearing? Because again, we do have a comparator here that we didn't have available with our other technology. So if you think you're doing well, you can potentially do better. So I hope to see you soon. Okay, thank you for joining us and take care. And I hope you all have a nice 2023. Okay, thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.